The grand chamber of the Galactic court shimmered beneath the glow of crystal lights. The air was filled with tension. Nobles, generals, and ambassadors from 100 star systems sat in silent rows. At the center of the hall, on a platform shaped like a star, stood Princess Ailina of the Sarath Empire. Her pale blue skin reflected the light, and her silver hair flowed down her shoulders like liquid moonlight. Ailina's eyes, the color of frozen glass, were steady, though her heart trembled. She was small and delicate, known across the empire for her beauty and wisdom. But today that beauty could not protect her. She was accused of disobedience, a crime of betrayal in the eyes of her father, the Emperor. The Emperor sat on a tall throne made of dark metal, his expression cold. His armor gleamed under the chamber lights. Around him stood his council waiting for his judgment. You refused a direct order, his voice thundered through the hall. You defied the command of your own blood. You chose to protect the humans when you were ordered to destroy them. Ailina raised her chin slightly. Her voice was soft but steady. They were defenseless, father. They had no weapons. To destroy them would have been murder, not victory. Murmurs filled the hall. No one had ever spoken against the Emperor so openly, especially not his own daughter. You speak as if you are wiser than your Emperor, he said sharply. Do you believe humans deserve mercy? They are primitive. They crawl across their tiny worlds, fighting among themselves. You risk the honor of our empire for them. Ailina took a deep breath. Perhaps they are not as advanced as we are, but they are not without worth. I have seen courage in their eyes and kindness in their hearts. That is worth something. Her father's hand tightened on the arm of his throne. His face darkened. Then let your admiration for them be your punishment. The hall went silent. You will be bound to a human, he declared. You will live among them as one of them. You will see with your own eyes how weak they are. Perhaps then you will understand the mistake of your sympathy. Ailina's breath caught. She tried to speak, but no words came. Her guards stepped forward. The council whispered among themselves. The punishment was cruel but final. The Emperor continued, The human chosen for you is a commander in their fleet. His name is Ryan. He will be your husband by law. You will leave the palace at dawn. The words struck her like cold iron. She bowed her head, not in obedience but in silent protest. That night, Ailina stood on her balcony, looking out over the glowing city of Sarath Prime. Towers of glass and steel stretched into the clouds, their lights flickering like stars. Her world was one of beauty and control, where everything was planned, where emotions were hidden behind manners and rules. But now she was being sent away, to live with a human, a species her people called unrefined and chaotic. Her hands trembled as she imagined her future. She had studied humans before. She knew their wars, their hunger, their mistakes, yet she also knew their music, their art, their bravery. Still, the thought of marrying one filled her with fear and shame. When dawn came, the Imperial ship awaited her. It was silver and shaped like a crescent, guarded by elite soldiers. Ailina wore a ceremonial gown made of soft silk, though it felt like chains against her skin. As she walked through the corridor of the palace for the last time, she kept her head high. The nobles watched in silence, whispering words she could not hear. The journey to the Human Alliance base took several hours through the warp channels. Ailina sat in silence, looking at the stars. Each one seemed distant and cold. She thought of the man she was being forced to meet. She wondered if he hated this arrangement as much as she did. When the ship finally landed, the airlock opened to reveal a different kind of world. The human base was simple and sturdy, made of steel and stone. The lights were warm, not shining like jewels but glowing like fire. A group of human officers stood waiting. At their front stood Commander Rion. He was tall, with strong shoulders and dark eyes that showed calm rather than pride. His uniform was plain, but his presence had a quiet strength. Unlike the Sarath nobles, he did not wear ornaments or symbols of rank. His expression was neutral as he stepped forward. Princess Ailina, he said respectfully. His voice was deep and clear. Welcome to the Alliance outpost. I am Commander Rion. Ailina studied him silently. He looked ordinary compared to the luminous beings of her race, yet there was something steady in his gaze. He did not bow too deeply, nor did he show fear. He treated her as an equal, which surprised her. I come by order of the Sarath Emperor, she said coldly. This marriage is a punishment, not a union. Do not mistake my presence for choice, Rion nodded. Understood, Princess. I did not ask for this either. But I believe even in strange orders we can find understanding. She turned away, refusing to meet his eyes again. The ceremony was brief and formal. Elena stood beside Rian as a neutral judge read the declaration. No grand music played, no celebration followed. When it was over, she was no longer a princess in title. She was a wife to a human. That evening, she was shown to their shared quarters aboard a small diplomatic vessel. The space was modest. A single sitting room, 2 sleeping chambers, and a shared observation deck overlooking the stars. Elena refused to speak much during the journey. She sat by the window, watching the endless void. Rian remained quiet, focusing on piloting the vessel and maintaining its systems. He gave her space, sensing her discomfort. When a meal was served, she did not eat. The food was human-made, strange in taste and texture. Ryan noticed but said nothing. He respected her silence. Later, he checked the ship's power systems and adjusted the oxygen levels, ensuring she would be comfortable in the human environment. As hours passed, Elena began to notice small things. The way Ryan moved, and careful but confident. The way he treated even the smallest malfunction as important. He did not complain, nor did he show anger. When the artificial night settled over the ship, Elena went to her chamber and stood before the mirror. She looked at her reflection, the pale glow of her skin, the tired look in her eyes. She had always been admired, praised for her grace and mind, but now she felt lost. She whispered to herself, "How can I live like this? How can I share a life with a human?" She sat on the bed and looked through the small window. Outside, the stars drifted slowly by. Somewhere among them was the world she had saved, the human colony she refused to destroy. She wondered if those people still lived in peace, unaware that their survival had cost her everything. In the next room, Ryan sat at his desk, reading the mission reports. He knew she hated the situation, and he did not blame her. He too had been ordered into this. Yet he could not bring himself to resent her. He had seen recordings of her speech before the council, how she had stood alone against an empire for the sake of mercy. That act had earned his respect long before they met. As he turned off the lights, he thought, perhaps she will see that not all humans are cruel. Perhaps she will understand why we fight to survive. And in the quiet of that first night, beneath the distant light of unknown stars, 2 lives began a journey neither had chosen, yet both would change forever. The next morning came quietly. The lights of the ship brightened slowly, mimicking sunrise. Princess Elena woke early, though she had barely slept. The hum of the engines filled the silence, steady and calm. She sat by the window again, watching the endless sea of stars. Commander Ryan was already awake. He stood near the main control panel, adjusting the navigation route. His movements were efficient, his focus sharp. He did not look at her right away. He respected her space just as he had done since the ceremony. Elena finally spoke after a long silence. "Where are we going?" Ryan turned to face her. "To the neutral zone between our territories. There is a research vessel stationed near the twin moons of Halara. We will live there for some time. It is quiet and safe." "Safe," she repeated softly. "From what?" "From anyone who might use us as a symbol," he said simply. "There are many who dislike this union, both human and Serath." Elena looked at him, noticing the calm way he spoke. His voice did not carry fear or pride. It was balanced, almost peaceful. She wondered how he could remain so composed when his own kind might see him as a pawn in a political game. The ship's path glowed across the display screen. Ryan checked the life support systems, then moved toward the kitchen area. He began preparing breakfast. Elena stayed silent but watched. His hands were steady as he cooked, his movements practiced. When he placed a tray on the table, he said, "You should eat something. The human atmosphere and food might feel strange, but your body will adjust." Elena looked down at the plate. The food was plain: fruit, bread, and something like warm soup. She hesitated, then took a small bite. It was simple but not unpleasant. "You made this?" she asked, surprised. "Yes," Ryan replied. "On long missions, it helps to know how to take care of yourself. Machines can break, but skill does not." Elena nodded slightly. She had grown up in luxury, surrounded by attendants and advanced machines. She had never seen a noble prepare food with his own hands. Humans, she thought, were strange creatures. Practical, adaptable, unafraid of work. After breakfast, Ryan checked the communication systems while Elena explored the small ship. The corridors were narrow and the walls plain, but everything was clean and organized. She found a small garden chamber with a few plants growing under artificial light. She touched one of the green leaves gently. It reminded her of the forests on her homeworld, which she might never see again. Later, she sat by the observation deck. Rian joined her, carrying a maintenance report. For a long time, they sat without speaking. The silence was not heavy, only quiet. Finally, Elena said, "You seem used to being alone." Ryan gave a small smile. "Commanders often are. Space travel can be long and lonely. You learn to listen to silence." She studied his face. It was not the face of a noble or ruler, but it carried strength. There was a kind of patience in his eyes, as if he had faced many storms and endured them all. "Do you regret this?" she asked suddenly. He thought for a moment. "Regret is not useful. We did not choose this, but we can choose what we make of it. That is what humans do. We make meaning out of what we are given." His words stayed in her mind long after he returned to his work. She had always believed her people were the most advanced in the galaxy, but this human's way of thinking felt different, simple yet deep. Hours passed. They continued their journey through the star lanes. When the ship entered a region of cosmic dust, small sparks of light shimmered across the hull. Elena walked to the control deck, watching the lights flash outside the window. "It is beautiful," she said softly. Ryan looked up from his console. "Yes, but dangerous. The magnetic storms in this region can damage small ships. We will need to pass carefully." He began adjusting the stabilizers. Elena stood beside him, curious. "Can I help?" she asked. He glanced at her in surprise but nodded. "Hold this lever steady when I tell you. It controls the auxiliary power flow." She followed his instructions carefully. For the first time since their forced marriage, they worked together. When the readings finally stabilized, Ryan said, "Good. You have a steady hand." Elena felt a small spark of pride. "My tutor said I learned fast." He gave her a short nod of approval. "It shows." After that moment, something between them changed slightly. The tension in the air eased, replaced by a quiet understanding. Later that evening, Elena walked to the lower deck where the engine core glowed faintly. Ryan was already there, checking the systems. She stood behind him for a while before asking, "Why did you accept this mission? You could have refused." He tightened a bolt before answering. "Orders are orders. But I also saw what you did on Kalar Prime, how you refused to destroy the colony. I respected that. Not many would risk everything for strangers." Elena was silent. "I only did what I thought was right." He turned slightly toward her. "That is what makes it rare." Her heart softened a little at his words. No one from her own kind had praised her for that choice. Most called her foolish or weak. Yet this human, the one she was told to despise, saw strength in what others saw as failure. The next few days passed quietly. They repaired small systems together, shared meals, and spoke in short conversations. Elena began to learn more about him. Ryan had grown up on a small colony world before joining the defense fleet. He spoke of his people's dreams to explore and survive despite their limits. In return, Elena told him about the Seraph world, their great floating cities and perfect order. Rian listened carefully, asking thoughtful questions. He never mocked her customs, though she could tell he found them strange. On the fourth day, the ship's sensors detected an energy fluctuation ahead. Ryan frowned at the readings. A magnetic wave. "We might pass through light turbulence." The lights dimmed slightly as the ship entered the storm. The hull vibrated. Elena gripped the edge of the control table. "Stay calm," Ryan said firmly. "It will pass," she nodded, trusting his voice. The ship shook as electric flashes danced across the viewing window. Elena's heart raced, but Ryan's steady presence kept her grounded. He moved between the controls with precision, his focus unbroken. When the turbulence finally stopped, the silence returned. Elena let out a long breath. "You did not even flinch," she said. He smiled faintly. "Fear does not help. Preparation does." She looked at him with new respect. "You are not what I expected." "What did you expect?" he asked. She hesitated. "I thought humans were loud, emotional, and reckless." Ryan laughed softly. "Sometimes we are, but not always." That night, Elena could not sleep. She kept thinking of how he had remained calm during the storm, how he had protected her without a single command. She began to see him not as a punishment, but as a person who carried quiet strength. The next morning they reached the twin moons of Halara. Two pale spheres floated close together, glowing softly. Around them orbited the neutral research vessel, their new home. The vessel was larger than their small transport, but still modest. Scientists and officers greeted them politely. Elena stepped onto the deck and breathed deeply. The air smelled of metal and faint ozone. It was not her world, but it was peaceful. Rian spoke with the ship's captain and arranged their quarters. Their room was simple but had a wide window that showed the moons. Elena stood there for a long time, watching the silver light reflect on the glass. She thought of how far she had come from her father's throne room. She was no longer a princess of command, but a woman learning to live in a new world. And though she did not say it out loud, part of her felt something unexpected, gratitude that the human beside her treated her not as a prisoner, but as a person. As the twin moons rose over the horizon, Elena realized that silence was no longer something to fear. It was the beginning of something new. The days on the research vessel passed quietly at first. Princess Elena and Commander Ryan settled into a calm routine. The ship orbited peacefully between the twin moons of Halara, glowing silver in the darkness of space. Scientists worked in the laboratories studying cosmic radiation and mineral samples. Elena spent most of her time in the observation chamber, where the stars stretched endlessly in every direction. The silence of space both comforted and saddened her. Sometimes she missed the soft music of the Sarath Palace or the scent of the gardens back home. But then she would remember that home was no longer hers. Ryan worked long hours in the engineering bay, repairing small faults in the power lines and adjusting the defense systems. He never complained even when he was tired. His presence brought a sense of stability to everyone on board. One evening, the captain of the research vessel announced that a magnetic storm was forming near their orbit. It was expected to pass at a safe distance, but all systems were placed on alert. The crew began securing loose equipment and checking emergency protocols. Elena watched from the upper deck as faint streaks of light began to move across the stars. They looked beautiful, like rivers of fire in the darkness. She turned to Rian and asked, "Is it dangerous?" "Not usually," he replied. "But if the storm changes course, we might feel some of its force. The energy waves can damage shields and navigation." His calm voice eased her worry for a moment, but as the lights grew brighter, her unease returned. She could sense something in the air, a faint vibration that made her skin tingle. The captain's voice came through the intercom. "All crew prepare for possible turbulence. Magnetic wave density increasing faster than predicted." Ryan's eyes narrowed as he read the energy readings on the display. "That is not good. The storm is shifting toward us." The ship trembled slightly. Alarms began to sound. The scientists hurried to their stations, sealing laboratory doors. Ryan moved quickly, adjusting the power flow to reinforce the shields. Elena stepped closer to the control panel. "What can I do?" Rian looked at her. "Stay near me. If the main power fails, we will need to restart the emergency systems manually." The next moment, a burst of light struck the ship. The entire vessel shook violently. Elena stumbled, and Ryan caught her before she fell. Sparks flew from one of the side consoles. The lights flickered, then dimmed to a deep red emergency glow. The captain's voice came again, strained this time. "All systems offline. We have lost contact with the main fleet. Shields failing. Prepare for impact waves." Rian steadied Elena and spoke firmly. "Follow me. We need to reach the auxiliary control room." They moved through the corridor as the floor trembled beneath them. Pieces of metal fell from the ceiling. Elena could feel the heat rising in the air as the energy waves passed around them. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to stay calm. Ryan led her into a smaller chamber where several backup consoles were still glowing faintly. He began reconnecting power lines manually. "Hold that lever," he said quickly. "When I say go, pull it down." Elena grabbed the lever with both hands. Her arms shook, but she did not let go. Sparks jumped from the panel as Ryan reattached the power couplings. "Now!" he shouted. She pulled the lever down. The lights flashed bright, then steadied. The sound of the engines returned faintly in the distance. Ryan checked the readings and nodded. Partial power restored. That should stabilize the hull. Another wave hit the ship, stronger than before. Elena was thrown against the wall and a sharp piece of metal scraped her arm. She winced in pain. Ryan rushed to her side, checking the wound. "It is not deep," he said, tearing a strip from his sleeve and wrapping it gently around her arm. His hands were careful but firm. "Thank you," she whispered. He looked at her for a moment, then said, "You did well. Without your help, we might have lost the backup systems." The storm raged outside for several more hours. They stayed together in the small control chamber, listening to the hum of the struggling engines. The emergency lights cast a soft orange glow on the walls. The noise of the storm sounded like distant thunder rolling through the void. Ailina sat beside Ryan on the cold metal floor. Her clothes were dusty, her hair tangled, but she did not care. For the first time since her punishment began, she felt something she had not felt in a long time: purpose. She looked at Ryan. His face was tired, his uniform smudged with grease and soot, but his eyes were steady. "How do you stay calm when everything around you is falling apart?" she asked. He smiled slightly. "Because panic does not fix anything. When fear comes, I focus on what I can do, one step at a time." She nodded slowly. "That sounds so simple, yet so difficult." "It becomes easier when you stop thinking about what you cannot control," he said. "You learn that strength is not in power but in patience." His words sank deep into her thoughts. In her world, power had always been measured by rank and control. Yet here, in this quiet moment of chaos, strength felt different. It was not loud or cruel. It was calm, steady, and human. When the storm finally began to fade, the vibrations in the walls grew softer. The lights returned to normal brightness. Ryan stood and offered her his hand. She hesitated for only a moment before taking it. His hand was warm, strong, and steady. He helped her stand, and for a brief second they looked at each other. There was no fear or pride in her eyes now. Only gratitude. "Thank you, Commander," she said softly. "For saving me." He shook his head. "You saved yourself. I only helped a little." They spent the rest of the night checking the ship for damage. Several outer panels were torn, and the communication array was destroyed. They were safe, but stranded until repairs could be completed. When their work was done, they returned to the observation deck. The storm had passed, leaving the stars shining brighter than before. The twin moons reflected light onto the hull, casting a calm glow inside the cabin. Ailina sat by the window, staring at the beauty outside. "It is strange," she said quietly. "Something so dangerous can leave behind such peace." Ryan stood beside her. "That is how the universe works. Sometimes the storm must come before the calm." She turned to him. "Do humans always speak in such simple wisdom?" He laughed softly. "Only when we survive something big." For the first time since they met, Ailina smiled. It was a small smile, but real. The tension between them began to fade. That night, neither of them spoke much. They sat together in silence, watching the stars move slowly past the glass. The quiet was no longer uncomfortable. It was gentle, almost comforting. Ailina thought of how she had judged humans before meeting Ryan. She had believed they were reckless and weak, guided only by emotion. But the man sitting beside her had shown her something different: courage that did not need to shout, kindness that did not ask for reward. When she finally went to her room, she lay awake for a long time, thinking about him. The memory of his calm voice and steady hand stayed in her mind. She felt a warmth she could not explain. It was not love, not yet, but something close to respect, maybe admiration. In his own chamber, Ryan looked out the window toward the fading trail of the storm. He thought of the princess who had risked her life to help him restore the power. She was no longer just a symbol of punishment. She was brave, intelligent, and stronger than she realized. He whispered quietly to himself, maybe this union was not a mistake after all. As the ship drifted peacefully between the twin moons, the storm that had almost destroyed them became the moment that began to bring them closer. Neither of them knew what the coming days would hold, but both understood one truth. They were no longer enemies bound by force. They were two souls learning to trust each other in the endless sea of stars. The storm was over, but the silence that followed felt heavy. The research vessel drifted between the twin moons, its engines weak and its shields damaged. Inside, the lights flickered softly as the systems tried to recover. Princess Ailina stood by the window, looking at the silver light of the moons. Her reflection on the glass looked pale and tired. The bandage on her arm was stained with a small mark of dried blood, a quiet reminder of what they had survived. Behind her, Commander Ryan checked the power systems again. His uniform was still torn at the sleeve, and his hands were covered with faint marks from burns and metal edges. Yet he worked with steady focus, refusing to rest. You should sit down, Elena said. You have been awake all night. He glanced at her and smiled faintly. So have you. I am used to long hours, she replied. Then we are the same in that, he said, tightening one last bolt before closing the panel. For a moment they stood in silence. The air between them no longer carried anger or pride. It carried respect born from shared struggle. Ryan turned on the diagnostic screen. The main engines are stable now, but the communication link is still broken. We cannot contact the fleet until it is repaired. How long will that take? She asked. Maybe 2 or 3 days, he said. We will manage. Elena nodded. She felt no fear this time. Something inside her had changed since the storm. She no longer saw Ryan as a stranger forced upon her. He had risked his life to protect her, and that memory stayed bright in her mind. She looked around the cabin and noticed the mess of tools scattered across the floor. Let me help you, she said. Ryan shook his head. You should rest. I want to help, she said firmly. I may not know your machines, but I can learn. He studied her for a moment, then handed her a small device. All right. This scanner reads the energy flow from the power grid. When the signal turns green, it means the connection is stable. She took the scanner carefully, watching the lights on its surface. He explained each part of the system, showing her where to look and what to check. At first, her movements were slow and uncertain, but she paid close attention to every word. After an hour of work, she managed to complete a full circuit scan. The light turned green. She smiled. It works, Ryan nodded. Good work, Princess. She hesitated before replying. You can call me Elena. I am no longer a princess here. He paused for a second, then said, All right, Elena. Hearing her name in his calm voice made her heart feel lighter. It was the first time it sounded natural, without rank or distance. Later that day, Ryan cleaned the wound on her arm again. He unwrapped the old bandage carefully, checking for signs of infection. His hands were gentle but firm. Elena watched him quietly. You are very skilled, she said softly. Do all human commanders learn healing too? Not exactly, he said with a smile. But when you spend months in space far from doctors, you learn to treat small injuries. You learn to depend on yourself, she nodded. Your people are very self-reliant. My kind rely on machines for everything. Machines are useful, he said, but they cannot think for you. They cannot feel when something is wrong. His words made her think deeply. On her homeworld, every task was done by machines and servants. Yet here, among humans, people learned to do things with their own hands. It was not weakness. It was strength of a different kind. That night, after the repairs were done, they sat together in the mess hall. The lights were dim, and the sound of the engines filled the quiet air. Ryan served 2 bowls of soup made from the ship's food supply. It was plain but warm. Elena tasted it and smiled slightly. It is not bad. It is not great either, Ryan said. But it keeps us alive, she laughed softly. The sound surprised them both. It was the first time she had laughed since leaving her world. You should laugh more, he said. It suits you. Her cheeks grew warm and she looked away, pretending to focus on her soup. I will try, she said quietly. The next morning, Elena joined Ryan on the outer deck for inspection. The damage from the storm was worse than they thought. Several panels had cracked and the antenna tower was bent out of shape. Ryan climbed halfway up the support structure using a safety line. You do not need to help with this part, he called down. It is not safe. Elena looked up, shading her eyes from the sunlight that reflected off the metal. I can still hand you the tools, he smiled. That would help. She passed him each tool carefully as he repaired the cables. Working together felt natural now. They did not speak much, but they understood each other through small gestures and glances. When the last bolt was tightened, Ryan climbed back down and stretched his arms. Done. The signal dish will need to recalibrate, but it should work soon. Elena wiped her hands on a cloth. You fix everything so easily. Not everything, he said, looking at her. Some things take time. She met his eyes and knew he meant more than just machines. As days passed, the communication link was finally restored. The captain received a faint signal from the human fleet. Relief spread across the crew, but Elena felt a strange sadness. Their time alone, the quiet days of shared work and peace, would soon end. That evening, as the ship prepared to transmit their coordinates, Elena stood on the observation deck once more. The stars glowed brightly and the twin moons hung like silver shields in the distance. Rayon joined her, carrying a small metal flask. "It is a human drink," he said, holding it out. "Not strong, just sweet. It helps calm the nerves." She took a small sip. The taste was unfamiliar but pleasant. "It is warm," she said. "Made from fruits that grow on my homeworld," he said. "When I was young, my mother used to make it every winter." Elena smiled. "You miss your home?" He nodded. "Sometimes, but the stars have become my second home." She looked at him thoughtfully. "You humans carry your home inside you. No matter where you go, you make it with your hands and your heart. That is how we survive," he said. "We make meaning from emptiness." Elena turned her gaze to the window. "Perhaps that is what I must learn, to make meaning where I once saw only punishment." Rian said nothing. He only stood beside her, watching the stars in silence. Later that night, the captain called Ryan to the command deck. The communication system had successfully reached the fleet. Rescue ships were on their way, expected to arrive in 3 days. When Elena heard the news, she smiled politely but felt her chest tighten. The thought of leaving the quiet world they had built together made her uneasy. She did not understand why. That night, she found Ryan in the engine room. He was finishing the last repairs, his face faintly lit by the glow of the core. She hesitated before speaking. "When the rescue ships arrive, will you return to your fleet?" He looked at her. "Yes, that is my duty. And I will return to my people," she said. Her voice was calm, but inside she felt something heavy. Ryan nodded. That was the agreement. She wanted to say more, but the words would not come. Instead, she looked at the glowing energy field and whispered, "You have shown me something my world never taught me." "Thank you." He stepped closer, his expression gentle. "And you have reminded me that mercy is not weakness. It takes courage to stand alone for what is right." For a moment, they simply looked at each other. The silence between them carried everything they could not say. When she finally left the engine room, Elena felt tears in her eyes. Not of sadness, but of understanding. The punishment her father had given her had become the lesson her heart needed. As the ship drifted under the twin moons, both of them knew that the rescue fleet would soon come. Their time together was ending, but what they had learned would not fade. Elena, once a frail princess afraid of humans, had discovered strength and compassion. Ryan, once a soldier who followed orders without question, had found peace in understanding. In the quiet hum of the ship, two hearts that began in distance now moved in rhythm, waiting for the dawn of change that would soon test everything they had come to feel. 3 days passed after the storm. The research vessel floated quietly near the twin moons of Halara. The damage had been repaired, the communication system worked again, and the crew finally felt safe. Yet for Elena and Ryan, peace carried a strange weight. They knew the rescue fleet was on its way, and with it, their time together would soon end. Elena spent most of the final day walking through the ship's narrow corridors, trying to memorize everything about this strange human world she had learned to understand. The hum of the engines, the soft glow of the lights, even the metallic scent of the air had become familiar. In the observation room, she found Ryan looking out at the stars. He stood tall and calm as always, but his eyes seemed distant, as if lost in thought. "The fleet will arrive soon," she said quietly. He nodded. "Yes, the message confirmed they will be here in a few hours." She walked closer and looked at the stars with him. "You must be glad to return to your people." He gave a small smile. "It will be good to see them again." "But I will miss this place," she glanced at him. "This place or this time?" Rian met her gaze. "Both." The words hung softly in the air. Neither spoke for a moment. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was full of unspoken understanding. When the fleet finally arrived, bright lights filled the darkness outside. 2 large ships emerged from the starfield, one bearing the insignia of the Human Alliance, the other marked with the royal emblem of the Serath Empire. The mixed colors of blue and gold illuminated the vessel where Elena and Ryan stood. The captain announced that both sides had agreed to meet on a neutral platform orbiting the moons. The arrangements were made quickly. Elena dressed in a simple white robe provided by the Serath crew, and Ryan wore his clean uniform again. As they stood side by side in the transport bay, waiting for departure, Elena spoke softly. "When this is over, what will you do?" "I will return to duty," he said. "My fleet is still in need of officers. The galaxy does not stop for peace," she nodded slowly. "And I will face my father." Rian looked at her carefully. He will see that his punishment did not break you. He will see what you have become. She gave a small smile. Perhaps that is what frightens him most. When they arrived on the neutral platform, both human and Serath representatives were waiting. The atmosphere was formal and tense. The Serath envoy bowed deeply as Aelina stepped forward. "Princess Aelina," said the envoy, "your father awaits your return. He believes your punishment has ended." Aelina's heart tightened at the word punishment. She turned slightly to look at Ryan, who stood silently beside her. His calm presence gave her strength. They entered the grand hall of the platform where a large communication screen displayed the image of the Serath Emperor. His face appeared cold and distant as ever. The crown of silver rested on his brow, but his eyes were sharp as blades. "My daughter," he said slowly, "you have fulfilled the command that was given to you. You have lived among the humans and seen their ways. Now you will return to your rightful place." Aelina bowed her head respectfully but did not answer at once. The Emperor's gaze shifted toward Ryan and the human commander. "You have carried out your duty with honor. You may now release my daughter and return to your world." Ryan nodded politely but remained silent. Then Aelina raised her head. Her voice was calm but firm. "Father, before I return, I must speak." The hall fell silent. Even the human officers nearby looked at her with interest. "I was sent to live among the humans as a lesson," she said. "You wished for me to see their weakness, their chaos, and their limits. But what I saw was not weakness. I saw strength. I saw people who build with their hands and hearts, who face storms without fear, who find hope even in darkness. I saw what true courage means." The Emperor frowned. "You speak as though you admire them." "I do," she said clearly, "and I have learned more from them than I ever learned within the palace walls. You taught me power, but they taught me purpose. You taught me control, but they taught me compassion." The Emperor's voice hardened. "You speak boldly for one who stands before her ruler. I speak as one who has seen truth," she said. "I will not deny what I have learned." The room grew still. The Emperor looked at her long and cold. "You would choose the company of humans over your own people?" Aelina turned slightly, her gaze finding Ryan's. "I would choose honesty over pride. I would choose peace over fear. And if that means walking beside those who are human, then yes, I will choose that." A murmur spread among the Serath envoys. The Emperor's expression did not change, but his eyes darkened. "You defy me again," Aelina's voice softened. "No, father. I only follow the lesson you gave me. You told me to live among them and understand their nature. I have done that. And I understand now that our empire's pride blinds us. The humans may not be as advanced, but they are not our enemies. They are mirrors of what we could become if we remembered humility." The Emperor said nothing for a long moment. Finally, he leaned back in his throne. "And what of the human you were bound to? Will you leave him behind now that your sentence is complete?" Aelina looked at Ryan. He stood straight, eyes calm, waiting for her answer. She took a deep breath. "No, I will not leave him. He is my husband by law. But more than that, he is my friend and my teacher. I wish to remain by his side." The Emperor's expression softened for the first time. Perhaps he saw in her the same resolve he once had in his youth, or perhaps he understood that she was no longer the fragile daughter he had once commanded. "You have made your choice," he said finally. "If you choose to walk with him, you will no longer hold the title of princess. You will be an exile from the Serath throne." Aelina lowered her head. "Then so be it." Ryan stepped forward and spoke for the first time. "Your Majesty, I give you my word that she will be treated with honor and respect. I will protect her as long as I live." The Emperor's eyes studied him carefully. "You are a brave man, Commander. Perhaps there is more to humanity than I allowed myself to see. Take care of her." With that, the transmission ended. The room remained quiet for a moment. Aelina felt a strange calm wash over her. She was no longer a princess, but she was free. Ryan stood beside her, silent but steady. When they returned to the research vessel later, the crew greeted them with warm smiles. Aelina felt lighter than she ever had before. She no longer carried the weight of duty or fear. That evening, she stood with Ryan on the deck watching the stars once more. The twin moons glowed softly and the light shimmered on the surface of the ship. "Are you certain about your choice?" Ryan asked quietly. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "I have lived in a palace full of gold and still felt empty. Here in this small ship with you and your people, I found meaning." He looked at her with gentle eyes. "You will be missed by your world. Perhaps, she said, but maybe they will remember my choice and see that change is possible. They stood side by side in silence. The stars stretched endlessly before them, bright and full of promise. As the engines came alive and the ship prepared to move again, Elena turned to Rian. "Where will we go now?" He smiled. "Wherever we are needed. The universe is wide and there is much to learn," she nodded. "Then let us go and learn together." The ship glided forward, leaving the orbit of the twin moons behind. The light of distant stars reflected in Elena's eyes, and for the first time she felt truly alive. The frail alien princess, who had once feared her fate, had become a woman of strength and purpose. The human who had once followed orders without emotion had found a reason to feel. Together, they journeyed into the unknown, not as a punishment but as a beginning, proof that even in a universe divided by pride and distance, understanding could build bridges stronger than war,